So, E3 just happened, and it wasn't great. I'm gonna be honest with you. Pretty boring. Some good highlights though. No scope. Metroid Dread comes out, and if you're a Game Pass user, you're gonna be eating good for the next year. And if you like remakes, of course, there's gonna be a lot of remakes. Kind of it. And if you're wondering why I'm laying on the floor in the middle of my living room, it's because the rest of E3 was a goddamn snooze fest. Let me make some coffee and we'll talk about it. So, when I say that E3 was bad, I'm not saying that the games that were announced for E3 were bad. There's a lot that I'm kind of looking forward to. But the presentations for E3 were awful. E3 this year was boring, uninspired, sort of this corporate, long-winded talk, bloaty. Some of the presentations showed trailers for way too long. It was just an exhausting experience to watch this year's E3. But there's a lot of good shit coming out. And I'm going to talk about those in a second. But let's kind of do a little brief thing. Xbox had one of the... Xbox was the first conference that did it right. They showed gameplay, they showed cinematics, and they showed most release dates. And it was all pretty fluid, pretty quick, relatively fast-paced. It wasn't until they got to Forza that it got slowed. So Xbox kind of did it right. Ubisoft, nothing to talk about Ubisoft. I think it was boring. They showed gameplay for too long. It was just uninteresting. Even though some of the games that they have coming out are pretty good. Gearbox, I don't know why they had a conference. I don't know why Gearbox had a conference. It was boring. They talked way too long about the behind-the-scenes movie. They showed way too long a clip for that. It was just awkward and uncomfortable to watch. So, Gearbox, not a good vibe. Square Enix has some great stuff to talk about. I mean, we're waiting for Final Fantasy Part 7, Part 2, potentially a Persona port. We're waiting for a lot of things from Final Fantasy. They have a lot of things that we're excited about as a fan base. And yet their conference was unbelievably short. It was uncomfortably short. To the point where everybody was wondering, wait, that's it? In the chat and us, when we did the Drunken Chip Reacts to it, we were so confused about why it ended so quickly. But we did see some cool stuff, you know, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy and all of that stuff. And the way that they did it was really great. They showed us the trailer. They showed us gameplay of it, like an extended gameplay segment of it, so that we get a feel for the game. And then they gave us a release date, which is actually not too far from now. So I think Square Enix had the best format, trailer, gameplay, release date, or whatever information needs to happen. And so I actually enjoyed the Square Enix conference, except it was way too short. Nintendo kind of had the most interesting conference out of everybody else. Just because they had more to show, they had more to talk about, they had really kind of like streamlined the process. They announced the game, they talk, they show us the trailer. If there's gameplay, we get some gameplay within the trailer. That's one thing that I've always liked about Nintendo. It's kind of that they always, or more likely always, will include some gameplay within the trailer so that you're never wondering what the game actually looks like. So yeah. I think Nintendo and Xbox had the strongest conferences of them all, but as a general rule, they were all just a bit boring, a bit dull. Nothing really was happening that caught my eye. The Xbox hosts always come off awkward and sort of confused, kind of like they don't want to be there. And it's probably because there's such a corporate air to E3, because E3 is Not really for the consumer. I think it's more for like the investors to know how their risk are gonna pay out, like to generate hype about the products. It's a big marketing conference, so like the consumer doesn't really get a lot out of it, I think, except just knowing when to get excited. But it always comes off kind of corporate and bland and awkward and forced. And I think that it's because these massive corporations kind of don't know. I think that the audience just wants to get the information for the games, learn what they're excited about, and kind of move on. And I think that the E3 conferences are just a little too long, especially now that they had to do this one all digital because of COVID. I feel like the format didn't change enough in order to accommodate that digital presentation. And I think that's why E3 this year sucked. Not the games. A lot of the games are cool, a lot of the games are exciting. The event of E3 has lost its flash. I think it's lost connection with the audience that it's trying to market to. And I think that sort of makes it a boring process to get through. You have to mine through all of this awkwardness and cringe to get to the information that you need to know. To the point where I know a lot of people didn't even watch E3. They just waited for E3 to happen and are now reading the announcements on IGN or Polygon or whatever the hell they do. But that being said, just kind of like a quick brief on how I felt about all of the E3. I am going to recap some of the biggest announcements, and I will be reading them because it's a lot of information. So let's get into that, shall we? So we're going to start with Xbox. They announced Elden Ring, which I fear a lot of people have been really excited about. That releases on January 21, 2022. Next, we got Star Citizen, Bethesda's next Todd Howard-led project. It releases on November 22, and it's kind of described as Skyrim in space. Redfall, the vampire hero shooter developed by Dishonored. I'm not quite sure when we get a release date for that. I didn't see one. I may have missed it. It looks really fun. We got a really long cinematic cutscene for it. It looks interesting. I wish we could have seen some gameplay. But if you're into hero shooters, this might mix things up for you. You're fighting vampires instead of zombies. It looks really fun. Next, we got Forza Horizon 5. It has a release date of November 29th, 2021. This game looks incredibly gorgeous. It looks phenomenal. It's kind of the same experience that you're going to get from your previous Forzas. They added some multiplayer capacities that weren't there before. But it's really the visuals that make this game look stunning and interesting. It is so pretty to look at, that driving around this environment. If you're a fan of the franchise, you kind of know what to expect. But driving around this environment looks gorgeous, looks insane. It's going to really take advantage of the Xbox hardware. And it's one of their flagship games, so I'm not surprised that they spend so much time talking about it. I just wish I had talked about it less in the conference. It got to the point where it was dragging quite a bit, showing us kind of the same gameplay. So if you're a Forza fan, you're going to be eating well. The game looks gorgeous. Comes out November 29th. And then there's an insane amount of Xbox Game Pass content. I'm not even going to bother to list them all because almost every game that they showed said coming on Xbox Game Pass Day 1. There's just a lot of it, so I'm going to put a list in the description. Hopefully I can find it somewhere. If you're an Xbox Game Pass user, you're going to be having a really good time throughout the year. Almost every game that Xbox showed is going to release on Xbox Game Pass on the day 1 of their release. A lot of those games don't have release dates, so we won't know when their day 1 is going to be. But the fact that they're going to be included in Xbox Game Pass makes the service significantly more attractive now, especially to people like me, who I wasn't particularly interested in Xbox Game Pass because I felt like they were lacking a lot of content. I think this is what Xbox Game Pass needed. I think their platform needed to have a user base driven to it, and I think that this push for Game Pass content is just that. It's just more games, easily affordable price. It's all about accessibility. You can play them on Xbox, some of them you can play on PC. I think Xbox is doing a really smart business move here by putting a lot of their new library into Xbox Game Pass. That being said, I wish that they had talked less about Xbox Game Pass and more about the games that are going to be coming on Xbox Game Pass. A lot of the conference was kind of Xbox Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass. They're really pushing the Game Pass, which is understandable. I wish they had done it earlier in the year, and I wish a lot of the games that they're announcing now had been there for the launch of the Xbox Series X. I think it would have really helped the console feel fresh and not kind of a duplicate of the Xbox One. That being said, smart move from Xbox. I was really excited to see the conference. I think they did a great job, even though it was quite long. The amount of stuff that they announced was insanely fun, including Halo Infinite, which got delayed significantly in its development and has seen a bit of a development hell. It's been rocky, multiple game directors have left. We finally have a release date. It comes out this holiday. The campaign looks like it's going to be a continuation of Halo 5, so we're not retconning anything. The game looks insanely gorgeous. The trailer that we got was delicious. And then, to top it all off, we get a free-to-play multiplayer that's going to be available for Halo Infinite, which I think is an absolutely brilliant move because the Halo multiplayer has left kind of the traditional ecosystem that we all grew familiar with. It is now moving into a more Call of Duty-like game as a service thing, where there are seasons, there's competitiveness attached to it, tournaments, that kind of thing, items that you can unlock, which is not inherently a bad thing, it's just a shift. But the fact that it gave us a free-to-play multiplayer for Halo that looks incredibly gorgeous, it looks fantastic. We have a grappling hook now, the mechanics seems to have been updated, the weapon designs look incredible, the character design looks incredible, everything about the Halo Infinite multiplayer looks really good in that trailer and that multiplayer deep dive that they did. So I'm really hoping that it doesn't disappoint, because Halo Infinite looks delicious. That's it for Xbox. Like I said, I think they have one of the most interesting conferences, and they're doing something really smart, which is they're pushing Xbox Game Pass, and they're pushing their ecosystem and their platform by announcing all of these exclusives, which are going to bring back players that left the Xbox platform in favor of Sony or PS5 back into Xbox. And I love that. I really want to see Xbox succeed. I think they have a good library of games. I just think they haven't been necessarily taking advantage of their platform. And I think that this push to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass is going to do just that. So. The biggest announcements for Ubisoft this year include Rainbow Six Extraction, previously known as Quarantine. It's slated for a September 16th release after being significantly delayed at the beginning of the pandemic. There was a gameplay revealed, a pretty in-depth gameplay too, so if you want to check that out to see what to expect out of the game, please do so. We'll put a little link in the description. They showed off some more Far Cry 6, including a piece of DLC that'll let you play as the main antagonist from Far Cry 3, 4, and 5. I think that's a really interesting move as a DLC for their next entry into the game. You'll be able to explore the mindset of all of these main baddies that have been kind of the focal point of the franchise since 3, and I think that's going to be good. Gameplay for Far Cry 6, if it's anything like Far Cry 5, is going to be really fun and intuitive. I like the franchise. I think they got a lot going on. Wish we could have seen a little bit more of the core gameplay for Far Cry 6, but we haven't had any information on that. I'm also not aware of any release date for Far Cry 6. I may have missed that. I apologize if I do. I'll put it on here. I'll put it at the bottom of the frame if I find it. Ubisoft's most interesting announcement is actually an open-world sports game called Riders Republic. It's a game where you just jump on a map and then you just do sports and play with groups of people. It releases on September 2nd. It's a really interesting concept. Open world games are one thing, but open world sports game I feel like we've never seen before, and that's worth checking out just on that concept alone, just to see how they execute it. It's available pretty soon, so if you're interested in any like mountain sports, skiing, bike riding, mountain hiking, all that kind of stuff, check it out, Riders Republic. It looks really interesting, and it's surprisingly the most creative entry in the Ubisoft announcement this year, considering the fact that they have like really massive franchises like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry and all of that. Riders Republic, worth a shot. That's it for Ubisoft. Not a great deal to talk about there. Again, really excited about Riders Republic. Other than that, only if you're a fan of those series are you going to check them out. Square Enix, probably the shortest conference that I've ever seen in one of these things. It lasted like 30 minutes. We were all confused when it ended. The chat was full of, that's it? That's all we're getting? So Square Enix, even though they had a lot of really cool stuff to show, definitely the shortest, I think, most disappointing conference of the bunch. But here's what they got. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy releases October 26th of this year. It's an action RPG, much in the same vein of Final Fantasy VII Remake in terms of combat, but you get to play as Star-Lord as he leads the group of the Guardians of the Galaxy into the next adventure. It takes a lot of inspiration from the comics. I'm not expecting a lot of MCU influence in this game. It looks incredibly pretty. The dialogue system looks a lot of fun. The combat system looks incredibly synergetic. It looks a lot of fun, and I am very excited for Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm going to be checking it out for sure, especially with all of the gameplay cues that it takes from Final Fantasy VII Part Two. Sorry, from Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm just very excited to see that type of gameplay applied into something that's not Final Fantasy, and I'm glad that Square kind of took that risk to put that gameplay mechanics in there and didn't make it like the Marvel's Avenger game that came out recently, which was kind of a bummer. The Life is Strange collection is coming to Switch, including the original entry into the franchise and Life is Strange True Colors, which follows an empath that can read people's emotions. This is kind of a very niche game that has become very, very popular, myself included. I love this franchise, so I'm very excited to check it out. Now that I'm aware of it, I wasn't aware of it before. Now that I'm aware of it coming into the Switch, I might buy it on the Switch just so I can play it on the go. Really cool announcement. Then we have Eminem emotionally cosplaying as Shadow the Hedgehog in the latest Final Fantasy entry called Strangers of Paradise: Final Fantasy Origins. The game looks really fun, but it is definitely an edgelord meme central. You got Eminem wearing an H&M fit, followed by armored lady and armored black dude, just saying that they're gonna kill Chaos the entire time. It looks great. It looks great. The gameplay looked phenomenal. It's developed by Team Ninja, which always has some really good combat. I've been playing Ninja Gaiden recently. Delicious. But yeah, I'm very excited for Final Fantasy Strangers of Paradise. The Dragon Rampa games are coming to Switch. You can get them digitally one by one, or you can get them as a bundle that is exclusive to physical media. It's a little bit weird, but if you're a fan, I'm sure that you're not going to mind having to go get a physical copy out of the store. It's great. Dragon Rampa games are very fun, and I finally get to try them without much obstacle. We finally have a new entry into the WarioWare franchise, including a co-op mode into the game. WarioWare has always been one of those micro game franchises that are very fun, but also very niche in the kind of people that play them and the kind of people that buy them. So I suspect that's why we haven't gotten a big entry, but with the Switch being as great as it is, it kind of made sense to release a WarioWare. And now they include a co-op, which is going to drastically change the gameplay experience. They played for a little while on Treehouse Direct. If you want to go find that to see what the game looks like, you're absolutely welcome to. But the WarioWare, this looks really fun. The new WarioWare game looks incredibly fun, and it releases at some point this September. I couldn't find a specific date. Tekken's Kazuya has been announced as a new character for... Tekken's Kazuya has been announced as the penultimate character for the Smash Brothers DLC. Tekken's Kazuya has been announced as the new DLC character for Smash Brothers. I believe he is the penultimate DLC that's going to be coming out. We don't have a lot of information about him yet, except for the little bit of footage that we saw during the announcement, but more information is going to come on the character on June 28th. Metroid fans finally get to eat. After 19 years of the franchise not having an entry, we finally see a newcomer into the Metroid franchise in the form of Metroid Dread. Releases on October 8th, 2021, so it's not too long of a wait. I'm very excited. It's back into the 2D platformer, Metroidvania type gameplay, and it looks like it's got a couple of like horror elements built into it, which I'm very excited about. So, Metroid Dread, October 8th. If you're a Metroid fans, you're very, 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 very happy. Then finally, we have some news on Breath of the Wild 2. We got another trailer and then a release year. It releases on 2022. The fact that we don't have a specific date leads me to believe that it's going to release towards the latter half of the year, but the fact that we have a release date and hopefully it doesn't get delayed again is significant. I am very, very excited for Breath of the Wild 2. In the trailer, we saw a couple of little mechanics that are a little bit unusual. We saw Link going through the floor, and then we saw, I think we're going back into the Sky World as someone was diving, as they do in Skyward Sword. Other than that, Nintendo didn't really talk about much. They had a couple of Zelda anniversary items, like the Game & Watch Zelda games. I believe Skyward Sword HD is coming to the Switch, which is going to be playable using motion control as well as handheld mode, optimizing them for that. That's all very exciting. I wish we could have seen the Twilight Princess and maybe even a Wind Waker port for the remasters into the Switch. But as a fan of Zelda, Breath of the Wild 2 is really going to carry me waiting for the rest of the game. Very, very exciting. And that's kind of it for E3. Like I said, it's not a bad conference, but it just was lackluster in comparison to the hype that we've been feeling for E3 so far. I really liked it. I had a lot of fun covering it with the guys over at Drunken Ship. Um, I had a lot of fun covering with the guys here at Drunken Ship, but I'm not particularly excited except for Halo Infinite, Breath of the Wild 2, and a game that I forgot to mention because it's already been kind of announced, and it wasn't particularly in any of the conferences, was Battlefield 2042. I think Battlefield 2042 is going to be sort of my return back into shooters a little bit. I'm quite excited for it. But yeah, that's all I have to say about E3. I think it was a relatively mediocre conference with a lot of cool shit coming out, especially if you're a fan of remakes. Nintendo's got you covered for that. If you're an Xbox Game Pass user, Xbox has got way more than enough content coming out for you. So enjoy. That was E3. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you next time.